"Can I be your daughter, please?" the maid's toddler asked the lonely billionaire. And he broke down in tears. The house had 47 rooms. Ethan Cole knew this because he had counted them once, on a night so quiet that the silence felt like it was slowly pressing against his chest, like two hands squeezing his heart from both sides. 47 rooms. 12 bathrooms. A library with floor-to-ceiling shelves full of books he barely touched anymore. A swimming pool with water so still and blue it looked like a painting. A garden that bloomed every spring without anyone ever walking through it. A kitchen so large that the sound of a single coffee mug being set on the granite counter echoed like a small bell ringing inside an empty church. He had built all of it. Not with his hands, of course. Men like Ethan Cole hired other people to do the physical building. But he had built it with everything else. With his mind. With his obsession. With 14-hour workdays and 6-day workweeks, and a refusal so deep in his bones that even when people told him he was going to fail, he just lowered his head and kept going. He had started with nothing. A small apartment, a broken laptop, a big idea, and a mother who believed in him more than he believed in himself. He had clawed his way up from the bottom of everything. He had not failed. At 34 years old, Ethan Cole was worth more money than most people would see in 10 lifetimes. His name was on buildings in 7 cities across America. His company, Cole Industries, had changed the way the United States used clean energy. 2 covers of Time magazine. A Forbes profile that called him the most important entrepreneur of his generation. Invitations to dinners with senators and celebrities and world leaders. A net worth that had so many zeros behind it that it stopped feeling like a real number and started feeling like a score in a video game. He had everything, and he was the loneliest man on earth. He never talked about the loneliness. Men who had achieved what he had achieved were not supposed to feel it. They were supposed to be grateful, driven, satisfied, complete. They were supposed to walk through their 47-room mansions and feel proud. So Ethan did what he had always done with the feelings he didn't know how to carry. He buried them under work. More meetings. More calls. More contracts. More decisions. He filled every single hour of his day so full that there was no empty space left for the ache that lived just beneath his ribcage, in a place that all the success in the world had never been able to reach. He had been engaged once. Her name was Victoria. She was brilliant, beautiful, and everything the world thought a man like Ethan deserved. They had dated for 3 years. He had bought the ring without hesitation, a diamond so large it caught light from across a room. But somewhere between the proposal and the wedding date, something cracked. Quietly. Without drama. The way old would sometimes just gives way in the middle of a peaceful night. She had told him, with real tears falling down her real face, that she felt like she was in love with a ghost. That he was standing right there in the room but completely absent from every place that actually mattered. That she loved him. God, she loved him. But she could not spend the rest of her life loving a wall that never loved her back. He hadn't argued. He hadn't even been surprised. He'd handed her back the ring. Watched her leave. Gone to work the next morning at 6 a.m. like absolutely nothing had happened. That was 3 years ago. And since then, the mansion had grown quieter and quieter. His schedule had grown fuller and fuller. And the hollow, empty place inside him had grown deeper and wider and darker, like a well with no bottom and no water. Just cold, silent stone going down forever. The only people who came and went in the house were his staff. A chef named Robert who arrived every morning before sunrise. A groundskeeper named Marcus who kept the garden alive even though no one ever walked in it. 2 housekeepers who came 3 days a week and moved quietly through the rooms like soft ghosts, touching nothing personal, speaking only when spoken to. And then, on a Tuesday morning in the middle of October, a new name appeared on his household staff list. Deanna Reyes, housekeeper. Start date: October 14th. Ethan barely glanced at it. He approved the hire without looking up from his laptop. He had approved dozens of staff hires the same way. Quickly, distantly, without any real attention. They were names on a screen. People who worked in his house without ever really entering his world. He had no idea that this particular name was about to change everything. He had no idea that Diana Reyes was going to come to work on her very first day with a tiny 3-year-old girl on her hip, dark curly hair and wide brown eyes, and a stuffed yellow rabbit clutched tight against her little chest, because the babysitter had cancelled at the last minute and Diana had no other choice, and she was terrified of losing this job before it even began. He had no idea that this tiny 3-year-old girl, this small, soft, fearless little person named Lily, was going to walk into his 47-room mansion like she owned it. And he had absolutely no idea that within 6 weeks, this child, this 3-year-old daughter of his new housekeeper, was going to look up at him with those enormous brown eyes and ask him the question that would break him completely open. The question that would crack the wall Victoria had told him would never come down. The question that would change his life in ways he never could have planned or predicted or protected himself from. But all of that was still coming. On that Tuesday morning in October, Ethan Cole just sat in his home office in front of his laptop, alone as always, working as always, feeling nothing as always. And downstairs the front door opened. And a little girl named Lily walked in carrying a stuffed yellow rabbit. And somewhere deep inside Ethan Cole's chest, in that hollow, empty, stone-cold well, something very quietly began to stir. Diana Reyes had not slept the night before. She had lain on the small mattress in her one-bedroom apartment, the one she shared with Lily, who slept in the only real bed, while Diana slept on a pull-out sofa that left a metal bar pressing into the middle of her back every single night, and she had stared at the ceiling for 4 straight hours, running through every possible disaster that could happen tomorrow. What if the new employer was cold and harsh and sent her home the moment he saw Lily? What if she lost this job before her first day was even over? What if she couldn't pay rent next month? What if the power got shut off again? What if? She had pressed both hands flat against her chest and breathed slowly until the spiral slowed down. This was something she had learned to do after Marco left. After Lily's father had looked at his newborn daughter once. Just once, and decided that fatherhood was not something he wanted to be part of. Diana had learned to slow her own panic down by force, because panic was something she could not afford. She was all Lily had. She had to stay steady. She had to stay standing. No matter what. Diana was 26 years old, and she had the kind of strength that doesn't look like strength from the outside. She wasn't loud. She wasn't fierce in any obvious way. She was quiet, careful, gentle, and deeply, completely devoted to the tiny little girl who had somehow become the entire reason she got up every morning. Lily was 3 years and 2 months old. And Lily was afraid of absolutely nothing. Where Diana worried, Lily wondered. Where Diana hesitated, Lily ran forward. Where Diana saw a world full of things that could go wrong, Lily saw a world full of things she hadn't touched yet. She woke up every morning like she had been given the most exciting gift in the universe, and the gift was Tuesday. The gift was breakfast. The gift was the way sunlight moved across the kitchen floor in little squares. She was the kind of child who stopped in the middle of a sidewalk to crouch down and study a beetle with the total, focused seriousness of a scientist, and then looked up with eyes wide open and said, "Mama, he has 6 legs. Did you know?" Diana always said, "Yes, baby." He knew. She didn't always know. But Lily's wonder was something she protected fiercely, like a small flame in wind. On that October morning, Diana dressed Lily carefully. A soft pink sweater, little dark jeans, the white sneakers with the Velcro straps that Lily could almost do herself. She braided Lily's dark curly hair in 2 braids because Lily said braids made her feel like a princess, and Diana needed Lily to feel like a princess today. She needed Lily to be well-behaved and quiet and stay right beside her and not touch things and not talk too much to the employer and definitely not ask him any of her many questions. Lily had a lot of questions. About everything. All the time. "Mama," Lily said in the car, clutching her stuffed yellow rabbit, whose name was Sunny, and who had been washed so many times that his color had faded from bright yellow to soft cream. "Where we going?" "To work, baby. Mama's new job." "Is it a big house?" "Very big." Lily's eyes went wide. "Bigger than Miss Carroll's house." Miss Carroll was their neighbor, whose apartment was only slightly larger than theirs. "Much bigger." Lily considered this with great seriousness, hugging Sunny tighter. "Does a nice person live there?" Diana paused just a moment too long. "He's a very important person. But is he nice?" "I think so, baby. I hope so." Lily nodded, satisfied with this answer in the way that only 3-year-olds can be satisfied. Completely, without any lingering doubt. She looked out the car window at the passing trees and started humming to herself, a little tuneless song she made up every morning that was different every single day. Diana gripped the steering wheel and prayed quietly. When they pulled through the iron gates and the mansion came into view at the end of the long driveway, Diana felt her stomach drop. It was enormous. It was the kind of house that didn't look like a house. It looked like something you saw in movies. Gray stone and tall windows and old trees standing guard on either side like dark soldiers. Beautiful and cold and completely, utterly silent. Diana parked and got Lily out of the car and straightened her own blazer and took one long deep breath. Lily looked up at the house. Then she looked up at her mother. Then she reached up and took Diana's hand in her small warm one and said very simply, "It's okay, Mama. I'm here." And Diana nearly burst into tears right there in the driveway. The housekeeper who answered the door was Mrs. Patterson, a kind-faced older woman who managed the rest of the staff. She took one look at Lily and her expression flickered. Surprise, then something warmer. "Oh," she said softly. "Who is this?" "This is my daughter, Lily. My babysitter canceled this morning. It will never happen again, I promise. I couldn't miss the first day and I had no one else." "It's all right," Mrs. Patterson said gently, stepping aside. "Mr. Cole is upstairs in his office. He won't even come down until noon. You can get settled." Diana exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for 3 hours. Lily walked inside. She walked into the marble entrance hall with its soaring ceilings and its chandelier and its grand staircase, and she stopped. She tilted her head all the way back to look up at the chandelier. The light hit it and scattered into 100 tiny rainbows across the walls and floor. Lily's mouth fell open. "Mama," she whispered, in the most reverent voice a 3-year-old has ever used. "It's magic in here." Diana wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. She got to work. She kept Lily close, gave her a small bag of crackers and Sunny the rabbit, and set her up in a corner of the large downstairs sitting room where she could see her at all times. Lily sat quietly for almost 20 minutes, which was, for Lily, practically a miracle, looking at everything around her with those wide, serious eyes. Then the footsteps came down the stairs. Heavy, low. The footsteps of a man who was not in a hurry because he had nowhere he actually wanted to be. Diana's hands froze on the window she was cleaning. Ethan Cole walked into the room. He was tall. Dark hair, slightly too long like he kept forgetting to cut it. A gray sweater and dark pants. A face that might have been handsome if it wasn't so closed. Like a door that had been shut so long it had forgotten how to open. He was holding a coffee mug and looking at his phone, and he walked in like he expected the room to be empty. He stopped. He looked up. And Lily, sitting in the corner with Sunny the rabbit on her lap and a cracker in her hand, looked right back at him. Neither of them said anything for 1 full second. Then Lily raised her little hand and waved. Just a small, cheerful wave. Like she was greeting an old friend. And Ethan Cole, billionaire, the most important entrepreneur of his generation, the man with the 47-room mansion and the stone-cold well inside his chest, blinked. Something moved across his face. Something fast and unguarded, like a curtain blown open by wind. There and gone in a second. He looked at Diana. Diana looked like she might pass out. "Mr. Cole," she started. "I'm so sorry, my babysitter." "It's fine," he said. His voice was flat, even. And he turned and walked back out of the room. But Diana saw it. She saw that one unguarded second on his face. And Lily watched him go with those enormous brown eyes, her head tilted to one side, the cracker forgotten in her hand. "Mama," she said quietly. "Yes, baby. That man is sad." Diana looked at her daughter, 3 years old, who had known him for 30 seconds. "Why do you think that, sweetheart?" Lily looked at the empty doorway where Ethan had been standing. "His eyes," she said simply. "His eyes look like when I lost Sonny that one time. Before you found him." Diana had no words. She turned back to the window, and somewhere upstairs a door closed. Started small, the way all real things do. The first week, Lily came to the mansion 3 more times. Always unexpectedly. Always because the babysitter situation was a patchwork of favors and last-minute fixes that Diana was constantly scrambling to hold together. Each time Mrs. Patterson waved them through with increasing warmth. And each time Lily found her corner and settled in with Sonny and her crackers and her enormous, quiet observations about the world. Ethan's strategy was simple. Ignore the child. Not cruelly. He wasn't capable of cruelty toward something so small, but with the same distant efficiency he applied to everything in his personal life that he didn't know how to handle. He routed around her. Took his coffee to the office. Used the back stairs. Stayed upstairs until he was certain the housekeeper and her daughter were in a different part of the house. This strategy lasted exactly 4 days. On the 5th day, he came downstairs at 7 a.m. because he had a call at 7:30 and he needed documents from the printer in the downstairs office. He was almost there when he heard it. Singing. Very small, very off-key, very confident singing. Coming from the sitting room. He should have kept walking. He almost did. Instead, he stopped in the doorway. Lily was sitting cross-legged on the floor in front of the big window. Sonny the rabbit was propped against the glass like he was looking outside. And Lily was singing to him. A song that had no real words, just sounds that went up and down in a pattern only she understood. Her little braids swinging slightly with the rhythm. She didn't notice Ethan. He stood there for what was probably 20 seconds, though it felt longer. There was something about the scene, the early morning light coming through the glass, the tiny girl singing to her rabbit, the complete and total self-contained joy of it, that reached past every wall he had and grabbed something deep and raw inside him. He must have moved because she looked up. No fear. No shyness. Just those wide brown eyes finding his face directly. "Hi," she said. "Hi," he said. He was surprised he said anything. "I'm singing to Sonny," she explained seriously, like this was important information he needed. "He gets scared in new places. So I sing to him." Ethan looked at the faded yellow rabbit propped against the glass. "Does it help?" Lily considered this with great care. "Yes," she said. "He feels better after." There was a pause. "What's your name?" she asked. "Ethan." She tried it. "Fan. Close enough. I'm Lily. And this is Sonny." She held up the rabbit. "You can say hi to him if you want. He likes meeting people." Ethan looked at the rabbit. He felt completely ridiculous. He also felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time, though he couldn't have named it yet. "Hi, Sonny," he said. Lily beamed at him like he had done something wonderful. He got his documents and went upstairs. But for the first time in longer than he could remember, the documents sat on his desk for 10 minutes before he actually looked at them. The second week she found the library. Ethan heard the tiny footsteps and looked up from his chair to find Lily standing in the library doorway, eyes so wide he could see the white all the way around her brown irises. She was staring at the shelves. All 4 walls, floor to ceiling, thousands of books. "Are all those yours?" she breathed. "Yes." "Did you read all of them?" Honest answer. "No." She walked in. Slowly, carefully, like she was entering something sacred. She reached up and touched the spine of a low book with one gentle finger. Then she looked at him. Can I touch them? Something about the asking. The politeness of it. Care. Yes, he said. She smiled. She pulled out a book. It was large, a photography book about the ocean, and carried it to the floor with both hands like it was precious. She sat down and opened it and stared at the photographs. It's so big, she said softly, looking at a picture of the open sea. The ocean. She looked up at him. Have you been there? Many times. Is it cold? Sometimes. Warm other times. Depends where you go. She looked back at the picture. I never been, she said. Not sad. Just factual. A thing she was noting. Ethan looked at this 3-year-old girl sitting on his library floor looking at photographs of an ocean she had never seen, and something moved in his chest. Something small. Something careful. Something that hurt a little, the way feeling does when it returns to a place that has been numb. By the 3rd week, a routine had formed, silently without anyone deciding it. When Lily was at the mansion, she would find wherever Ethan was and drift toward it like a small planet finding its orbit. She never demanded his attention. She never asked him to play or talk or engage. She just existed near him with complete comfort, as if his presence was simply a pleasant feature of her environment. Talk. But never at him. More like beside him, a running stream of observations that he was welcome to respond to or not. Mama says the leaves turn orange because they're getting ready to rest. Like sleeping. But orange. Sunny's ear is getting floppy. Mama says she'll sew it but she's always tired. I think that bird outside lives in that same tree every day. I think it's his favorite. Ethan found himself responding. Quietly. Briefly. But responding. The stone-cold well inside his chest was still there. But something was falling into it. Drop by drop. Small and warm and light. It happened on a Thursday afternoon in November. The weather had turned sharp and cold and the trees outside had gone bare. Diana was working in the East Wing, cleaning the guest rooms that were never actually used by guests. Ethan was in the sitting room with his laptop, on a break between calls. And Lily, who had been given strict instructions to stay in the sitting room and be quiet, was being quiet in the particular way that meant she was building up to something. Ethan had started to recognize the signs. The way she got very still. The way she hugged Sunny tighter than usual. The way her eyes moved over a thing or a person like she was solving an equation in a language only she spoke. She was sitting beside him on the floor. She had long stopped sitting in the corner, had slowly, over the weeks, migrated closer and closer until she simply sat beside wherever he was, like this was normal, like this was always how it had been. She was quiet for a long time. Then, Fan. Yeah. Do you have a little girl? He looked at her. His jaw tightened slightly, the way it did when something touched the edges of things he didn't talk about. No. Do you want one? The question landed like a stone dropped into water. Perfectly quiet. And then the rings spreading outward. He didn't answer right away. He looked back at his laptop. Why are you asking that? Lily pulled at Sunny's ear, the floppy one. She was quiet for another moment. Then she looked up at him, and her face was so serious, so achingly earnest, that it almost looked like the face of someone much older. Because, she said slowly, working through the words like she was carrying something heavy and wanted to set it down carefully. I don't have a daddy. And you don't have a little girl. He paused. And I think maybe that's sad. For both of us. Ethan's hands went still on the keyboard. And I was thinking, Lily continued in that same careful voice, that maybe, if you wanted. He stopped. She looked down at Sunny. She looked back up. And then she said it. Can I be your daughter, please? 7 words. 7 words in a tiny 3-year-old voice, said with complete sincerity and complete vulnerability and complete, devastating hope. 7 words that walked straight past every wall, every defense, Every layer of distance and protection that Ethan Cole had spent years and years and years building. He didn't move. He didn't speak. The laptop screen in front of him blurred. He had not cried in a very long time. He was not sure he remembered how. He had cried at his mother's funeral 6 years ago, and he had told himself then that he was setting that down, that grief, that tenderness, that openness, that he was putting it away somewhere safe and quiet because the world required him to be harder than that. He had kept that promise to himself. Until right now. Because right now, a 3-year-old girl was looking up at him with eyes full of hope and a faded yellow rabbit in her arms. And she had just asked him the question that cracked him straight down the middle. A single tear ran down his face. Then another. Lily watched him. She didn't look scared by the tears. She didn't look confused. She just looked at him with that same steady, ancient seriousness. Then she reached up, her small arm stretching high, and she put her tiny hand on his cheek. Warm and soft and certain. "It's okay to cry," she told him with absolute authority. "Mama says crying means your heart is real." And Ethan Cole, the billionaire, the businessman, the most important entrepreneur of his generation, the man with 47 rooms and a net worth with more zeros than he could count, the man who had handed back a diamond ring without flinching, the man who had not let himself be soft or open or undone in 6 long years, put his face in his hands and wept. Not quietly. Not the controlled, dignified kind. The real kind. The deep kind. The kind that comes from the bottom of a well that has been silent for far too long. And Lily, 3 years old, 4 feet tall, holding a floppy-eared yellow rabbit, reached over and put her small arms around his arm, as much of a hug as she could reach, and she held on. She didn't say anything else. She just held on. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was, in fact, everything. Diana found them 20 minutes later. She stood in the doorway of the sitting room with a cleaning cloth in her hand, and her heart stopped completely. Her daughter was curled up against Ethan Cole's side. She had climbed up onto the couch at some point, still holding Sonny, and she was asleep. Her face was soft and her breathing was slow and her dark braids were slightly messy, and she looked like the most peaceful thing on earth. And Ethan was just sitting there, very still. One arm curved carefully around her like he was afraid to move and break something fragile. His eyes were red-rimmed. His face was open in a way Diana had never seen on it in all her weeks of working here. Open and wrecked and quietly, terribly tender. He looked up when he heard her. "I'm so sorry," Diana whispered, moving forward. "I'll take her, she shouldn't have." "Please don't," he said. His voice was quiet and raw and real. Diana stopped. "She asked me something," he said. He stopped. Followed. "She asked me if she could be my daughter." Diana put her hand over her mouth. "I wasn't expecting it," he said, looking down at Lily's sleeping face. "I don't think anything could have prepared me for it." Diana sat down slowly in the chair across from him. She didn't know what to say. She didn't try to fill the silence with anything. "How do you do it?" he asked. "Do what?" "All of it." He looked at her. "Raise her. Alone. Work this hard. Stay this." He searched for the word. "This real. How are you still that real?" Diana was quiet for a moment. "I don't have the option of not being real," she said finally. "She needs a real mother. Not a perfect one. A real one." She looked at her daughter sleeping against this man's side. "She sees everything, you know. She sees people the way most of us forget how to." "I know," he said softly. "I know she does." That was the day everything began to shift. Didn't happen all at once. Real things rarely do. But Ethan started to change in small, visible ways that his staff noticed before he did. He came downstairs earlier. He lingered in rooms instead of routing around them. He asked Mrs. Patterson to put a small table and a child-sized chair in the corner of the library. No explanation given. And the next time Lily was there, she found it and looked at it for a long moment and then looked at him with those enormous eyes. Is that for me? She asked. If you want it. She walked over to it very seriously, sat down in the small chair, placed Sunny on the table and said, Yes, I want it. He put books on the lower shelves. Picture books, nature books, books about animals and oceans and space. He ordered them online at 11 at night and felt deeply foolish and didn't care even slightly. He started leaving his office door open. He learned that Lily's favorite color was yellow, because it was Sunny's color. That she was afraid of the vacuum cleaner but not of thunder. That she called the moon the night sun, and had never been convinced otherwise. That she always needed 3 sips of water before she could fall asleep, and that she took the last sip, put the cup down and said okay to herself like a small formal agreement with sleep. He learned these things because he paid attention. For the first time in years, he was paying attention to something that wasn't work. One evening, Diana was still finishing up when it got dark earlier than expected. She was worried. She had to get Lily fed and bathed and in bed, and the drive home was 40 minutes, and Lily was flagging. Stay for dinner, Ethan said. He said it quickly, like if he hesitated he wouldn't say it. Both of you. Robert made too much food. He always makes too much food. Diana looked at him. Please, he added. And the words sat in the air between them, genuine and slightly unfamiliar on his tongue, like a word he was relearning. They stayed for dinner. The 3 of them sat at the end of a dining table that was meant for 14 people. Robert had made pasta, simple, warm, perfect. Lily ate with great focus and great mess. She got sauce on her sleeve and looked up at Ethan and said, Don't tell Mama, while Mama was sitting right there. Diana laughed. A real laugh surprised out of her. Ethan smiled. Not a polite smile. Not the professional, controlled expression he used in meetings. Real one. Slow and rusty and slightly crooked, like it hadn't been used in a long time and needed a moment to remember how. Diana saw it and felt something shift in her chest, something she pushed firmly aside because she was his employee and this was not something she could afford to feel. But Lily looked at Ethan's smile and then looked at Diana and then looked back at Ethan and said very matter-of-factly, You look better when you do that. Do what? He asked. Smile, she said. You should do it more. And he looked at this 3-year-old girl with pasta sauce on her sleeve and a yellow rabbit on the chair beside her. And he said, quietly, honestly, in a voice that came from somewhere deep and newly open, I'm working on it. December arrived and brought snow with it. The first real snow of the season came on a Sunday morning, thick and white and silent, covering the garden and the driveway and all 47 rooms worth of window ledges in soft, perfect stillness. Ethan stood at his bedroom window at 6 a.m. and looked at it and felt, for the first time in years, something that was almost peace. His phone had 17 unread emails. He looked at them. He set the phone down. He went and made coffee. Diana and Lily arrived that morning. Diana was working a weekend shift to cover some December expenses, and when Lily saw the snow through the front door, she made a sound that was not quite a word. Just a pure note of joy, like a small bell rung once. Snow, she said, in a voice like a prayer. Have you seen it before? Ethan asked. Not a lot, she said. Just a little bit once. But not like this. She pressed her hands and her nose against the glass of the front door and fogged it up with her breath. Can we go outside? Diana started to say something careful about work and schedules, but Ethan was already saying, Yes. Go get your coat. Diana looked at him. You too, he said. Both of you. They went outside. Lily ran into the garden that had never been walked through, the garden that bloomed every year for no one, and she spun in a circle with her arms out and her face up and her mouth open catching snowflakes. She laughed. The sound of it went up into the white sky and stayed there. Ethan stood at the edge of the garden and watched her and felt something so large and so warm and so painful in the best possible way move through him that he had to press his lips together for a moment to hold himself steady. Diana stood beside him. Their breath made small clouds in the cold air. She's something, Diana said softly. She's extraordinary, he said. No hesitation. Diana smiled. That quiet, private smile she had when something touched her but she wasn't ready to say so. She meant it, Ethan said. When she asked, she meant every word of it. She always means every word of everything. I know. He was quiet. I've been thinking about it. About what she said. About what He stopped. Started again. I'm not good at this. Any of this. People. Feelings. Being present. I know I'm not. Nobody is at first. No. I mean I'm particularly bad at it. I was trained out of it. I trained myself out of it. He looked at the garden. At Lily crouching down to study a snow-covered bush with total scientific focus. But I don't want to be any more. Diana was quiet. I want to ask you something, he said. And I want you to know that there's no pressure and nothing changes either way. Your job is yours regardless. I want that to be clear. Okay, she said carefully. He turned to look at her. I want to be part of her life. In whatever way makes sense. In whatever way you're comfortable with. He paused. She asked me if she could be my daughter. I couldn't answer her then. But my answer is yes. Whatever that means. Whatever shape it takes. I want to show up for her. He looked back at Lily. And I want to show up for you. Because she has you because of everything you've given and His voice caught slightly. I want to be worthy of being in the orbit of that. Diana was silent for a long moment. She was thinking about her pull-out sofa and her metal bar and her 4 a.m. panics and the babysitter patchwork and the month she had eaten crackers for dinner 3 days in a row so that Lily could have real food and still feel like everything was okay. She was thinking about how tired she was, all the time, in the deep-in-the-bones way that never fully went away. She was thinking about how she had promised herself she wouldn't need anyone, because needing people had never once ended safely for her. And she was thinking about Lily in this garden. Right now, spinning in the snow like joy was something she was made of. I'm not looking for rescue, Diana said finally. Quietly but clearly. I'm not offering it, he said. I'm offering something smaller than that. Just being there. Consistently. If you'll let me. She looked at him, really looked at him. At the open, unwalled face. At the man who had cried when her daughter put her small hand on his cheek. At the man who had put a child-sized chair in his library and stocked the lower shelves with picture books at 11 o'clock at night. Okay, she said. One word. But it meant something. It meant a door opening. 3 months later, on a Saturday afternoon in March, Ethan was sitting on the library floor with Lily in his lap. She had demanded he read her the ocean book, the big photography book she had first found on her own, and he was reading it to her slowly, pointing at the pictures, and she was asking him questions about every single one with her full, relentless, magnificent 3-year-old curiosity. What's that fish? An anglerfish. It lives in the very deep, very dark part of the ocean where no light reaches. Is he scared? I don't think so. I think that's just his home. Lily considered this. I would be scared. Of the dark. Of no light. She pointed at the anglerfish's bioluminescent lure. But he has his own light. Look. He does, Ethan said. He makes his own. Lily looked up at him from his lap. Like you, she said. What? You make your own light now, she said simply. You didn't before. But now you do. He looked at her. This child. This small, fearless, ancient, extraordinary child. How do you know that? He asked softly. A shrug. The way only 3-year-olds can shrug. Total, uncomplicated, unself-conscious. Because you smile now, she said. And you come find us. Before you used to hide. She patted his arm with her small hand. But you don't hide anymore. Ethan held this little girl a little tighter. Diana was in the doorway. He didn't know when she'd arrived. She was leaning against the frame with her arms crossed loosely and her eyes bright, watching them, and when his eyes met hers she didn't look away. He mouthed something to her. 2 words. "Thank you." She smiled, real and quiet and full. Later that evening, when Lily had fallen asleep on the couch with Sunny tucked under her chin and her braids loose and her face soft with sleep, Ethan sat across from Diana in the warm light of the sitting room and they talked for 2 hours about everything and nothing. Her childhood in Arizona, his in Ohio, the first time she knew she wanted to be a mother, the first time he realized he had forgotten how to want things for himself. At the end of the night, before Diana gathered Lily up in her arms to carry her to the car, Lily stirred and opened one eye. She looked at Ethan. "Ethan," she said, sleep thick and soft. "Yeah, Lily. Did you decide?" He knew what she was asking. He leaned forward and put his hand gently on her head, on her loose dark curls, the way he had seen Diana do 100 times. "Yeah, baby," he said. "I decided." She closed her eye. She smiled, small and satisfied and sure. "Good," she murmured, and was asleep again. Ethan Cole stood at the front door and watched Diana carry his girl to the car, and he thought about the 47 rooms behind him, about how they had always felt like evidence of something, of his worth, his achievement, his proof that he mattered. They still felt like that. But now they also felt like something else. They felt like space, like room. Like a house that was finally, slowly learning what it meant to be a home. He went back inside. He left the light on. Some people come into your life like a storm, loud and dramatic and impossible to ignore. And some people come in quietly, with braids and a yellow rabbit and 7 small words that rearrange everything. Lily came in quietly. And she changed everything. The end.